let me first of all recognize my colleagues and friends, Dr. Mithika and Mr. Peter Odengo, who you called money back. I didn't know his money back. It's interesting. And all of you, really, editors, journalists, students. Let me begin by thanking you for inviting me to come and have a discussion with yourselves, really, on matters that are important, not just for Kenya, but indeed for the entire world. I wasn't entirely clear on the overall objective of the session, whether it is a capacity building session to, educate young journalists about co-processes and matters of climate science, or really to reflect on the happenings globally on issues of climate. I will choose the latter because I wasn't really quite prepared to come and train you on co-processes. But I do hear the concerns and the challenges that you all face on covering complex multilateral processes, be it COPs on climate or COPs on other issues. I think one matter that we can prioritize going forward is to provide, training sessions on what this whole thing called COP is about. And COPs are just acronyms or abbreviations, rather, of events, multilateral events that bring together for global community to discuss important agenda items. But for now, I think let's just reflect on, we are now, 18th of December, the year is coming to an end. Reflect on the year that is ending and look forward to the year that is coming. And let me, as I say that, thank you all as journalists, really, for the good work that you have been doing. You are the eyes and ears of society. You bring the discussions and the challenges and the issues that many people are not able to access and understand to all of us. I think one of the first things that we all do as people of the world nowadays is to immediately we wake up, either look at TV or look at your mobiles or other gadgets to get the latest happenings around you and around the world. And it is you people who are doing all that. You're doing a fantastic job in creating that understanding. And so we commend you, really. Climate, biodiversity, desertification, chemicals, plastics, all these things are very important issues that have direct implications for all of us in different ways. But unless you, as journalists, break it down for all of us as a global community, as societies, as communities, whether it is grandmother or grandfather, or really a child and a youth, or any other person, it is important that we break it down, and you have been doing a fantastic job with that regard. Looking back to this year, this was really a very monumental year. As you all know, we had engagements and multilateral processes for at least 4 important events that just concluded. The first one, the main one that really started with regard to environmental issues, was the biodiversity one, and we had the Conference of Parties. That's what COP is about. So we had the 16th Conference of Parties that took place in Calais, in Colombia, that discussed the whole issue of biodiversity. There were a number of important outcomes. I didn't see much coverage on the biodiversity conference. We are a mega biodiverse country, as we call ourselves. The number of living, uh, living substances and living creatures in this country, both flora and fauna, both overland and underwater, underwater and underland, above water and above land, are billions, and we don't know all of them, and they are impacting our development, our growth, our health. And it's important for us to really get interested in issues of biodiversity. It was a very challenging conference. We had, of course, the Kenyan delegation that was led by some senior officials from the Ministry of Environment. But as you know, it did not conclude well because that conference, at the end of the day, as I think the journalist from KBC was saying, towards the end of COPs, there is limitations. Many of the developing country participants usually come for a limited time, but the trend has always been that COPs overshoot the provided dates because it's not easy to conclude discussions, and so and we need to conclude discussions. So a lot of people in Calais left, and very strangely, and I think it's the first time ever, I suppose, that the COP could not reach a conclusion because of issues of quorum. And so the conference had to suspend some of the agenda items for the next session, which will be in 2 years. But there was important outcome because there was an agreement on a facility, biodiversity facility, that was agreed, Calais Fund on biodiversity. That was followed by the Conference of Parties on Climate Change, which is of the interest, I suppose, today here in this meeting. It's a big COP. Climate change, as other colleagues have pointed out, is no longer about a specific issue in life. It's not about environment, certainly. It is about environment, but not just about environment. Climate change is about everything in life, from the whole development complex of the world, and it's gaining more and more interest. It's growing. Whilst the biodiversity conference attracts anything below 20,000 participants, climate conferences have now been attracting, tens of thousands. The biggest conference so far on climate was the Dubai one, which attracted just about 100,000 human beings. Incredible amount of people coming to discuss just one important issue called climate change. The Baku conference that just ended late last month was the second most attended conference. From the figures that the Secretariat of the Climate Change has given us, it has attracted upwards of 70,000 people from all over the world. So it is usually a big jamboree, if I can call it so, which brings together all manner of people, from heads of states who come during the first few days, to experts, scientists, to activists, and to people who just really come to push the whole agenda and demonstrate and make demonstrations in the streets of the cities that are holding. And you've seen this. It's a big issue. Of course, in some countries, such demonstrations are curtailed, but in some other countries, it's big. You'll probably have seen the Climate Week in New York. It's such a big thing. It's attracting tens of thousands of people walking for I don't know how many kilometers the last day of the Climate Week of New York. So that conference of parties, COP29, had a lot of important issues. As you know, we were meeting in Baku at a time when the realities of climate change continues to impact all of us, and it's being brought to our homes directly every single day, whether you're coming from a developing country like ourselves, or you're coming from developed part of the world. The reality of climate change is here with all of us, and hundreds, thousands of people are losing their lives every day from one aspect of climate change to another. Development priorities are being altered, are being challenged, are being changed, are being curtailed because of climate change everywhere in the world. And so this is something that continues to attract a lot of people. So what was the main issue. But let me first of all just conclude the other conferences before I come back to COP29. So the other one is the one that happened in South Korea on plastics, a big agenda item. There are plastic bottles in front of us, and plastic is a big challenge around the world. Marine animals and animals on land, and even ourselves, we continue consuming microplastics and impacting us. The health impacts of plastics have been well documented by scientists throughout the world. And so there is an attempt to ban some aspects of plastics. But unfortunately, as you all know, just like the previous one in Calais, in Colombia, the outcome was not successful because there are interests, vested interests of some of the parties are countries, parties to the plastic treaty that was being discussed, did not want to accept ban of the plastics because it's an economic issue for many countries that are producing plastics or producing the raw material that is used to produce plastics, and that is fossil fuel. They don't want to lose that opportunity, and so unfortunately we did not succeed, and hopefully it will continue. And then the last one is the one that just ended in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, which is the COP16 of the United Nations Convention on Combating Desertification, UNCCD. Again, here the African group has been pushing for a standalone protocol. This is one of the three Rio conventions, as we call them, which were adopted by the global community in 1992 in Rio de Janeiro. That is the Climate Change Convention, abbreviated as UNFCCC, and the Biodiversity Convention, UNCDD, and the Desertification Convention. But this is the orphan, as we call it, of the three conventions. And unfortunately, it is largely an African issue only, because really the parts of the world where drought is a big matter is largely on the African continent. In fact, the convention is called Especially Africa. And so, to a large extent, it has been the weaker of the three conventions. So the African group has been pushing for a protocol, as you've seen. This was mandated from a meeting that happened a few years back in Windhoek in Namibia. And so we wanted to have a protocol to this, to address the ever-expanding and challenging drought situations that the African continent continues to face. But again, unfortunately, there wasn't concurrence and consensus on the matter, and therefore it has also been pushed back, and so there was no real success from that. So let's come back to COP29, which is my forte, so to speak. Now, I was saying earlier that we were meeting in Baku at a time when the impacts of climate change is being felt more and more by all developed and developing. You all know that the last 11 years, each year was warmer than the other. 23 was the warmest. You know that all indications are 24 will be the warmest ever. At least we had 2 days that have been recorded as the hottest days in the world so far. They all happened in July. And we will be awaiting to see the outcome of the report that the World Meteorological Organization is going to share with the global community very soon, sometimes in January. But all indications are 24 will also be the warmest. In our own context, of course, we have seen the devastations that the flooding has brought. I mean, we have suffered the floodings twice. Of course, soon after the terrible prolonged drought, which created so much loss of livelihood and lives in some cases, and of course, much devastation to our economy. So we were meeting under that situation. This is the situation. We also meeting at a time when the global geopolitics was shifting to the right, as you all know. And what that means is there's more conservatism, more nationalism, a lot of inward looking, whilst the issue of climate change and the issues of biodiversity and others, really, particularly climate change, requires global cooperation, requires multilateral cooperation. cooperation. We cannot solve issues of climate change singly, even if we do the best, really. The UNEP unit, in short, is hosted here in our country, releases a report every year that indicates the emissions that the world continues to release to the atmosphere. And of course, the report that was just released just before the COP indicated that we are on a track towards a 3.1 degrees world, because all the actions or plans, in short called NDCs, nationally determined contributions, that all governments and parties to the convention have submitted, even if we succeed in achieving them, which is unlikely, we will still be going towards a 3.1 degrees centigrade increase. And so far we've seen the world has already warmed up to about 1.5 degrees. If 1.5 can lead to the devastations that we are seeing everywhere, the heat waves, the droughts, the floods, the cyclones, and all this, what is a world of 3.1 going to look like? It's incredible. And so that is the scenario that, and yet that is happening in a global atmosphere that we all share. Every year, the pollution levels that continues to enter the atmosphere is estimated to be just about 41.6 to be exact, million gigatons of carbon dioxide equivalent every single year. And what the scientists have told us is, for us to avoid catastrophic action or impact from climate change, we just have a budget, we call it carbon budget, of just about 200 million gigatons of carbon dioxide equivalent. At 41, you can just do your back of the envelope of mathematics. It's what, 5 years? 40 times 5 is about 200 exactly, actually. And that is, so we have just 5 years. And yet, the global politics is turning more inward looking, and you don't care what happens to your next door neighbor. The emissions of the world, as you all know, are coming from those who have, much generation and production capabilities. Over the past, it has been the developed world, what we call the developed world, and developing. I know I don't have to educate you on this. These are things you report routinely. These are categorizations that the World Bank gives. But today, 63% of estimated emissions are coming from developing countries, particularly upper middle income countries. And I will not be naming countries here, say that country and that country, but overall, upper middle income countries are now the biggest emitters. And those we previously called developed, the emissions are significantly reducing because of technological innovations and developments and efforts that they've been doing over the years. So they account for barely about 30%, in fact 29% of the total emissions, including our countries from Africa. Of course, we keep on repeating that, what is our total emission? I'm sure you all have reported at various times, 4%. But that 4% is just from the energy sector, 4%. When you add the whole issue of land use, agriculture, conversions of land, our emissions is climbing. It's going up. And so what does that mean? We need to have a concerted, multilateral, global, collective action to address this issue. And for us to be able to address that for developing countries like us, what is it that we're asking for? We're asking for financing. Of course, I hear what my good friend says, the money bag gentleman you mentioned. We don't have that money, definitely. Even the money that Mr. Orengo has talked about, $295 million US, that is money that we borrowed and we will have to pay. There may be some amount of it which is grant, but that is money that my children, your children, your children's children will continue to pay back. So it's not free money. There's nobody who's going to give you free money, and there's nothing called free money. So what we require is investment, and we require financing. And so the big discussion in Baku was climate finance. And you had the acronym NCQG, meaning New Collective Quantified Goal. So the world had agreed by 2025 we must have a new goal, because we had another one that the world agreed in 2009 in Copenhagen, which was 100 billion. How much of that has been disbursed? I think that is something that you can, of course, do research and so on, but a lot of that money has been disbursed according to the developed countries, who are the ones who are supposed to disburse that money. OECD has written a report and they've given. Of course, it comes in various forms. It doesn't come as free gifts. It comes as loans. It comes as investments. It comes as some grants here and there. It comes as humanitarian support, all the responses. And we, as you know, our country is blessed. We have a significant number of non-state actors who are doing fantastic job. I think we need to commend them, really. There could be issues, but they are doing fantastic job in very remote parts of this country. And so that money, according to the ones who are disbursing, who are supposed to give, who are the developed countries, they say it has. So we are required to now look for, agree on a new goal above the 100. So that was a big discussion. And the goal, the 100 billion was arrived out without much assessments. It was just a few leaders of the world locked themselves in a room in a cold Copenhagen in December of 2009, and they didn't want a total failure, and they just said, let's agree, let's put on the table 100 billion, and so it was. But now we had the advantage of time to think about this issue. How much money do we need? And so there was a lot of work that went into the need and the priorities. What amount of money does the global community need to go beyond the 100 billion that was agreed in 2009? And we had to agree on that this year in the last COP29. And so the figure that the African group put forward, which was eventually agreed by the rest of the developing countries, whose acronym is G77, the group of 77 and China, was 1.3 trillion US dollars per year to help developing countries whose emissions, as I said earlier, will be the most significant emissions going forward, address the issue of mitigation, address the issue of resilience and adaptation. And so that was what we put forward as a developing country overall group. It was originally an African proposal, but eventually adopted by all of us. And we may not have achieved, as I don't know what one of the colleagues mentioned, but there were good successes from COP29. One of the successes, of course, there's a new goal that is at least 300 billion US dollars that was agreed to be available per year beginning 2035, by 2035, not beginning by 2035. There was also a very firm decision and agreement of coming up with a roadmap of arriving at the 1.3, which was the aspirational amount. And the 1.3 roadmap is something that Kenya in particular, and the rest of the African group, and a few other developing countries really pushed for, and we now are working towards how to realize that 1.3, because you can mention figures, but there must be clear processes of how to arrive at those figures. Where is it going to come from, and so forth. So the other good outcome from that was the conclusion of an agenda from the Paris Agreement, which was still outstanding after many years. This is the whole agenda of carbon markets. And colleagues, friends who are journalists, there are certainly challenges with carbon markets in Africa, in the world, but there are a lot of excellent stories about how carbon markets are helping the global community address the carbon footprints of hard-to-abate sectors and other corporations, and how that money flow is helping communities in places where they have abundance of sequestration capabilities. So I will encourage you to be positive, and I will not go into detail about that, but this was something that was pending for 10 years since Paris Agreement was agreed. So the only article that was not agreed on how it should be operationalized was the article, we call it Article 6, that deals with matters of carbon market. And it was a great success that Baku, COP29, delivered the whole issue of carbon markets. A big success for us as Kenya, as I think my colleagues Mivika and Peter earlier mentioned. We are a leading country on carbon markets. It has its ups and downs, but of course you are aware that the government has revised the Climate Change Act of 2016 to last year. It was revised, and the EU regulations, and the government is now putting in place, proper mechanisms to make sure that the carbon markets are properly regulated and not a wild, wild west affair as it was previously. So that was another big success. Of course, over the year, this year, I think the lady who attended Dubai was mentioning loss and damage was a big thing in Sharm el-Sheikh, COP27, and then of course delivered in COP28, and now it was operationalized fully during this year. And of course, that report was delivered at COP29. And there were many other good decisions that came out of the COP. But importantly, as I was saying, what is the overall objectives for climate? In order for us to develop resilience, I had a lot of people here, the young and the old, was saying it is no longer just environment, it's about development. Yet, the issues about development is attracting investment. How do you develop as an individual, as a country, or as a region? It must be through flows of money. When I want to develop myself as Ali, I seek financial support from the financial institutions to do the development that I want to do at personal level, and that is what all of us do, I'm sure. And as countries same, that's what we do. Unfortunately, of course, as you know, most of the African countries, including our own, we are in a serious financial situation, which is the debt situation. We've borrowed financing to respond to challenges arising from problems that we have not caused, climate change. Our rivers, our bridges, our roads, our livelihoods, farms are being washed away. I saw the good expose by Nation Media, Zainab Wandati, I think, on the flooding on the graves in Homa Bay, I think it was. And you can imagine that community, not just the graves, but all the farms that are still inundated by the overflow of the lake and the rains, and the impact those communities are having. We've seen, I come from Garissa, and we've seen how a tarmac road that the government of Kenya borrowed significant amounts of money, and that have been connecting and helping the communities to move up and down on their businesses, was washed away, and it took several days. We've seen how people in boats just to cross to the, to the town are washed or carried away in the boats. You've seen how all that happened. And we've seen the conflicts. I heard the young lady, the Somali lady saying, the marginalized groups, how conflicts is being, happening and being worsened by drought situation as communities move from their places to other places and then affect the livelihoods of others, pastoralists, people moving into farms and so on, and how these are communities who don't really hate each other, but because of circumstances. And all this has been, for government to respond, because we don't have enough revenue to respond to this, we've been borrowing money, and that borrowing to address the climate challenges is what is now causing big problem for Kenya and many African countries. And so the whole issue of climate finance, but the whole issue of international financial reform is an agenda, as you all know, that President William Ruto has been the forefront. And we're doing something significant towards that, and there are a lot of things happening also. So our position as Africa, as Kenya is a leader in this. Our president, as you know, is chairing the Committee of Heads of State and Government on matters climate change. I am myself privileged to chair the technical aspects of climate change and so forth. We are pushing that agenda, and we're pushing investments into Africa. Unfortunately, investments into Africa is not coming. We continue to attract less than 2%. Last year, I said in one of the meetings in Baku, you know, whilst the rest of the world has invested in excess of $1.8 trillion for clean energy, renewable energy, the continent that needs the most, the 600 million of us having no access to energy, the continent that has the greatest potential of renewable energy, be it the sun, solar, be it the hydros for many African countries with big rivers and so forth, be it the geo, like blessed some countries in the Rift Valley like ourselves, and so forth. We are attracting, last year, whilst the world invested 1.8, the investment in our continent went down by 47%, went down by 47%. So this is the reality of climate change that we are pushing. It's about the right development coming to support investments in the right places where the returns are the highest and where the needs are highest and where the greatest impact of addressing climate change can happen. So let's now look forward to this year, next year, sorry. Still a few days to the new year. We pray to Almighty God to allow us to reach happiness and health. So next year, we hosted a climate summit last year here. It was the first inaugural climate summit. It was really celebrated. It was such a success. And the African heads of state and government have agreed that we do it every 2 years. So the next one is next year, 2025, and we are planning for that in earnest. We are planning to host the next Africa Climate Summit. At this stage, I am not in a position to say which African city is going to host, but Kenya is providing the secretariat for that summit. And if there is no other offer that comes, of course, Nairobi is a wonderful place for everybody in Africa and the world to come. And so that is what we are working on going forward. Next year also is a very important year on matters finance. There's a big international meeting called the Financing for Development, the fourth one, that's going to take place sometimes in June, and therefore we are preparing, because you cannot just talk climate finance in a place called COP only, because this is really our all interconnected issue in the whole world. So you cannot just discuss climate finance and wait for December or late November to go to Brazil and discuss it. It has to be discussed. So that is a big agenda that is coming up, and we're linking climate finance and financing for development, FFD it's called, that we are working on. As you are aware also, the G20 is currently next year going to be chaired by Africa. It's a great opportunity for us. South Africa is going to chair, and we're glad that the chair of the G20. You know, G20 is important with regard to climate because 80% of the global emissions come from those G20 countries. In fact, it's just 75%. And now, as you know, Africa has G20 plus one, so G21. So when you add 54 African countries to the G20, the total global emission is 80% of the total global emission comes from that. But Africa 54, when you add to the 75, we only increase the 75 by a mere 4. So really, the 80% comes from G20. So it's important, and that's why the G20 meeting is such a critical issue. And we will be working from the climate perspective with the incoming G20 presidency, or to make sure that the African priorities are recognized and promoted. In two other issues that Kenya in particular is leading, and the Office of His Excellency President William Ruto is leading with regard to the financial reform, is the debt issue. We call it debt sustainability report. We have just we had an expert group that's working on that. We have an initial report, and we will be delivering that report to the boards of World Bank and IMF in meetings they call the spring meetings that happens in April. And we want to influence the Bretton Woods institutions on the whole issue of debt sustainability for developing countries, and particularly for Africa. And then, as I said, we have a roadmap to achieve the aspirational $1.3 trillion, the decision from Baku, and we have a task force that our head of state, His Excellency the President, and a few other heads of state from Global North and Global South are also pushing on the the innovative financing ways, and so that is something that we also want to deliver next year, both at the Bretton Woods institution sessions in Washington as well as the Belém COP30 meeting. So a lot of work, and there is plenty to report on. And once again, let me emphasize, please, look at climate as a developmental issue, as health issue, as agriculture issue. Importantly, the financial situation of the Global South is something that you really must pick on, the debt situation. And let's all be patriotic for our country, and let's remain positive, really, because I was in UNGA with His Excellency the President at the United Nations General Assembly, and the tweets that were going around that week when we were in New York, and it's such a shame, really, and I don't want to repeat them here, but you all know what kind of tweets are going on, and by who? By Kenyans themselves. I will encourage you, journalists, editors, really, it is our responsibility to build our country. There will be no miracles coming from anywhere. We can, of course, be supported with some loans and so forth, but ultimately, the challenge to improve ourselves as peoples, the challenge to build our country will only come from ourselves. And so by demeaning ourselves, we are only exposing ourselves. So you have a big responsibility as journalists, and I encourage you, please report positively. We are open to provide information. Our offices are open. You can literally walk to our office. Bernard is here, Victoria is there. We are available to give you interviews, give you information that you need, but let's report positively about our country. There is so much innovation happening in Kenya. The Kenya Climate Change Innovation Center, KCCIC, the amount of work young persons in our country are doing, the work that carbon market startups in Kenya are doing. Everybody is looking at this country, to learn from this country. And so let's report all those positive things that are happening in our country. And just to conclude, just to assure you that on the specifics of training, on what COP is about and why we overextend and so on, why people walk 15 kilometers a day like Mr. Mwizi did, and why some rooms are closed, and why the stone-faced security agencies don't allow you to enter this room. We will provide an opportunity to provide good training for even a bigger number, and I think Mr. Bernard, you can organize that sometimes early next year, and we provide good training on all the nitty-gritties about COPs in general, but of course climate COPs. With that, I thank you very much once again, and I'll be available for any questions that you have. Thank you very much.